Hello, folks. Yeah. I know what you're thinking. What the hell is this? But hey, you showed up, didn't you? Means you're looking for something. Or maybe you already feel something crawling under your skin. Something familiar. Something that's been sitting on your back for way too long. And you... He points at you through the crowd. You really think I don't see that weight you've been dragging around like it's welded to your spine? 20. Whole. Years. Motherf... 20 years of people watching you like you're some walking felony, like your name was printed on the damn devil's clipboard. And the funniest part? You didn't even say the thing, didn't even do the thing, didn't even know the damn thing they swore you were tied to. 20 years of whispers, 20 years of side eyes, 20 years of people treating you like you were born guilty. 20 years of that invisible spotlight burning holes through you every time you breathed wrong. And you just lived through it, didn't you? Yeah. You did. Raw, alone, no manual, no apology, no clarity. Just you and the feeling that every room you walked into already had a verdict ready before you even opened your mouth. You ever realize how wild that is? How insane it is that they spent 2 whole decades studying you like you were some discontinued artifact. Every move, every frown, every silence, every damn step you took felt like someone was taking notes in a back room you weren't invited to. You know what that does to a person? Turns your heartbeat into a damn caution sign. Turns your past into a conspiracy theory. Turns your future into a battlefield you didn't even sign up for. But here's the raw truth they didn't calculate for. You didn't break. You were supposed to. They were betting on it. They wanted a confession to a crime that wasn't yours. A meltdown they could point to and say, "See, look, he snapped. That's the proof." They wanted the pressure to crush your lungs until you tapped out, folded, surrendered, begged for air, but you didn't fold. No. You learned how to adapt. You learned how to breathe in atmospheres most people wouldn't survive 5 seconds in. You learned how to walk with eyes on your back without losing your absolute mind. You learned how to keep your soul steady even when the world wanted you unhinged. Because here's the funny little secret they never saw coming. Being watched for 20 years didn't make you weaker. It turned you into something else entirely. Something sharper, something colder, something that pays attention to everything and forgets nothing. You ever notice how you can clock a fake smile from across the room now? How you can feel people's intentions before they even form the sentence? How you can smell jealousy, insecurity, envy, manipulation like it's damn cologne? That's what happens when you live under surveillance without ever earning it. You develop senses they didn't mean to give you. You develop instincts that could save nations. You develop awareness that scares the hell out of the ones who tried to bury you. And let's talk about that fear, their fear of you. Because that's what all this was. This wasn't justice. This wasn't caution. This wasn't protection. This was fear dressed up as investigation. They feared what you could become. They feared your potential. They feared your voice. They feared the way you walked into a room and unintentionally made people rethink their roles. They feared how your presence felt like somebody pulled the plug on their comfort zone. And what do insecure people do when they fear someone? They try to build cages. They try to rewrite stories. They try to create narratives that make them feel safe, even if those narratives choke you. 20 years of lies surrounding you like fog. 20 years of your name floating around in mouths that never met you. 20 years of watching people try to dim something they couldn't even understand. But the hilarious twist? Everything they did to contain you ended up molding you into someone they're completely unprepared for. Because you didn't come out of those 20 years soft. You didn't come out confused. You didn't come out apologetic. You came out with clarity that people stronger than you never find in their entire lifetime. You came out with the kind of self-respect that scares weak men. You came out with the kind of emotional scar tissue that doesn't tear anymore. You came out with the kind of resilience that looks unfair to people who've never had to survive anything real. And here's the part that stings them the most. After 20 years of studying you, they still don't know who the hell you are. They don't know what drives you. They don't know what keeps you standing. They don't know why you didn't crumble. They don't know how your spirit works. They don't know how you turned pressure into power. They don't know how you turned suspicion into strategy. They don't know how you turned isolation into elevation. They don't know that every rumor made you more focused. They don't know that every doubt sharpened your vision. They don't know that every lie stitched your identity tighter. They don't know that every attempt to break you forged a version of you that's basically bulletproof. They spent 20 years trying to stop you from becoming someone, and ended up pushing you into becoming someone unstoppable. And there's this moment, you feel it, where you realize you don't even hate them for it. Because without that pressure, without that constant heat, without that never-ending shadow, you wouldn't be as precise, you wouldn't be as aware, you wouldn't be as dangerous, you wouldn't be as evolved. You became the version of you they feared you might grow into. You became the exact thing they tried to prevent. And they don't have an instruction manual for someone like you. And it hits you that every single year they watched you, every document they wrote, every whispered conversation that had your initials stamped on it. All that effort did nothing but build a myth around you. They can't control anymore. You feel it, right? That shift in the air when you walk in a room. People don't know whether to respect you, fear you, or beg you to explain how the hell you survived 20 years of being treated like a human suspect file. And the wild part is, you didn't even ask for this energy. You didn't go around trying to look dangerous or mysterious or unpredictable. You were just existing, literally breathing like a normal person, and somehow that irritated people who were banking on you being simple. They expected you to be predictable. They expected you to be controllable. They expected you to be the type who breaks down, melts, collapses under pressure. They didn't see the quiet fire sitting under your ribs. They didn't see that you had a patience level built from surviving environments. They wouldn't last 10 minutes in. They didn't see the way you were learning without even trying. 20 years under a microscope teaches you things textbooks don't know how to explain. It teaches you how to hear people's intentions, even when their words sound sweet. It teaches you how to sense energy shifts before anyone else realizes the room changed. It teaches you how to walk with a calmness that looks threatening to insecure people. And you've got that calmness, that unnerving energy, that silent storm aura. People can't read you anymore, and that stresses the hell out of them. They keep guessing, keep spinning theories, keep digging for explanations that don't exist. They don't realize that you're not unpredictable. You're just not manipulated the way they expected. You ever notice how people avoid eye contact with you when they're lying? How their voice changes pitch when they feel exposed around you? How they start over-explaining random shit as if you asked for details? That's not paranoia. That's awareness earned through years of being treated like a case file. And you didn't get bitter from it. You got smarter, not meaner. Sharper, not colder. Clearer. You learned the difference between people who clap for you and people who monitor you. You learned the difference between loyalty and convenience. You learned the difference between love and possession. You learned the difference between support and surveillance. And you learned those differences the hard way, the way that changes your DNA. 20 years being watched turned you into the kind of person who doesn't just see truth. You feel it in your bones before it even shows its face. That's why you react differently now. That's why you move differently. That's why your silence hits harder than people's loudest accusations. You ever scare yourself with how calm you can be? Like everyone's losing their minds, throwing tantrums, inventing drama, and you're just there, steady, breathing, observing, not rushing anything. That calmness isn't laziness. It's the type of discipline that forms when you've spent half your life being judged before you even speak. And here's what really messes with their heads. You never asked for revenge. You never asked for apologies. You never demanded anything back. You just kept moving, kept evolving, kept becoming something harder to corner. It's like you became this walking reminder that pressure creates diamonds, but only if the person refuses to turn into dust, and you refused, day after day, year after year. You refused to break, refused to explain yourself, refused to dim down your energy just to comfort people who couldn't handle your existence. And, you know what else? You carry a level of emotional endurance that's basically unfair to everybody around you. People get exhausted after one misunderstanding. You lived through decades of being misunderstood. People crumble after one rumor. You walked through entire years of rumors like they were background noise. People fall apart when someone doubts them. You were doubted by entire groups, entire systems, entire rooms, and you still kept your soul intact. That's not ordinary. That's not lucky. That's not accidental. That's the kind of resilience that builds legends without you even trying. And the craziest part is, you still haven't even shown them the full version of what you've become. You're still holding back, still analyzing, still growing, still building something inside yourself that nobody has a blueprint for. You're not the person they watched for 20 years. You're the person those 20 years accidentally built. A version of you that wasn't meant to exist. A version of you nobody prepared for. A version of you they don't have defenses for. And it hits different when you realize you weren't supposed to survive all that scrutiny with your sanity intact. People crumble over a bad week, a bad month, a bad rumor. You carried 2 decades of people waiting for you to slip, and you still walk like someone who knows exactly who the hell they are, even when the world didn't. You ever sit there and think, damn, if I made it through that, what exactly is left that could knock me down? Because that question creeps in, doesn't it? That quiet awareness that your threshold for pain is so high, it's basically unfair. You don't react like normal people anymore. You don't panic like them. You don't freeze like them. You've been forged under pressure levels that the average person would literally disintegrate under. That's why people keep staring at you with that mix of confusion and intimidation. They're trying to figure out how you can be calm after everything, how you can be collected after 20 years of being treated like some kind of walking time bomb, how you can still show up, still speak, still stand, still look people in the face without flinching. And the truth is, you became someone with emotional armor that wasn't built in therapy or comfort. It was built in silence, in isolation, in moments when you had every right to snap but didn't, That kind of strength isn't pretty. It's not inspirational poster strength. It's gritty, uncomfortable, heavy, unfair strength. The kind that people envy but never fully understand. People look at you and see the chill demeanor, the unbothered expression, the slow breathing. But that calmness didn't come from peace. It came from surviving chaos. It came from learning how to hold yourself together, even when the world was practically begging you to fall apart for their convenience. And, here's something nobody admits out loud. There were moments, deep down, when even you didn't know if you could keep going. Nights where your mind felt like a locked room with too many shadows. Days where every stare felt like a verdict. Moments where your silence felt like it was echoing back at you too loudly. But you didn't give up. You didn't let the pressure turn you into something bitter or hollow. You kept breathing, even when breathing felt like rebellion. People underestimate breathing until it becomes the only thing keeping you from collapsing. And you did that for years, quietly, without applause, without validation, without anyone acknowledging the madness you were living through. And that's where your power really started forming. In the spaces nobody saw, in the moments nobody cared about, in the battles nobody clapped for. That's why you walk different now. It's why your presence hits people before your words do. It's why your silence feels heavier than most people's shouting. You're carrying 20 years of forced self-control, 20 years of involuntary discipline, 20 years of being watched like your next move might shift the world. You ever think about how bizarre it is that you became the most stable person in the room without trying? Everyone else gets triggered by tiny things. You've lived through psychological earthquakes. Everyone else spirals over opinions. You've been surrounded by whole networks of people who had opinions about you that weren't even based on reality. Everyone else gets overwhelmed by attention. You've been under a violent level of attention that you never asked for. And the craziest part is, they didn't just fail to break you. They accidentally built someone whose emotional intelligence is basically weaponized at this point. You can sense tension from a mile away. You can read energy before anyone speaks. You can spot lies with scary accuracy. You can feel people's motives through vibes alone. You see everything now, not because you wanted to, but because you were forced into a kind of awareness that rewired your instincts. And that awareness, it's the very thing that terrifies the same people who tried to label you, reduce you, shrink you, misunderstand you. They don't know how to navigate someone who sees through them before they even finish a sentence. They don't know how to handle someone who's already analyzed their entire emotional blueprint before they blink. And you know exactly why that scares them. Because you're not supposed to have this level of clarity. You were supposed to crack. You were supposed to crumble. You were supposed to become the person they accused you of being. You were supposed to live down to their expectations. But you didn't. You evolved past them without even trying. You became the version of yourself that only pressure could build. You became the walking proof that misunderstanding someone for long enough creates a monster they can't control anymore. And every time they look at you, they feel the weight of everything they projected onto you, knowing damn well none of it stuck. You didn't turn into their narrative. You turned into their nightmare. And it's almost funny how they still pretend they don't feel it when you walk in. That shift, that hush, that weird tension in their shoulders, like something in the room suddenly got heavier, and they can't explain why. They don't realize they're reacting to the presence of someone who survived conditions designed to shatter the average person's mind. They don't get how someone can spend 20 years being doubted, monitored, whispered about, misread, misjudged, and still hold a straight posture like nothing ever touched them. And they really think it's because you're emotionless or detached or whatever label makes them feel comfortable. They don't know that it's not detachment. It's evolution. It's the strength that comes from holding yourself together in silence for too long. You learned early that explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you is just another trap. They weren't listening to understand. They were listening to confirm the story they already wrote in their heads. So you stopped explaining. You stopped defending. You stopped correcting rumors that were never rooted in reality anyway. You realized that silence terrifies people who rely on chaos to feel in control. And that silence became your greatest weapon. You mastered the art of saying nothing while communicating everything. Your facial expressions became more powerful than full conversations. Your pauses started hitting people harder than their insults. Your presence alone became a statement. That's why they act weird around you. That's why they hesitate. That's why they look away, fidget, adjust their shirt, clear their throat, laugh too loud, talk too much, talk too little. They feel exposed around you without you lifting a finger. You're not judging them. You're just seeing them. Completely, clearly, effortlessly. And that level of clarity sends fragile people running. Because here's something nobody wants to admit. Being watched for 20 years made you an expert at watching people back. Not in a creepy way, in a nothing gets past me anymore way. You notice micro-reactions. You notice emotional shifts. You notice the way someone's eyes move when they're lying. You notice the tone people use when their intentions aren't matching their words. You notice everything, and that terrifies folks who operate in manipulation and secrets. You ever notice how people act extra nice when they don't know how much you've already figured out about them? It's that panic politeness, that nervous friendliness, that over-the-top energy they use to hide guilt or insecurity. You see straight through it, even when you're not trying, and you keep that awareness quiet, which makes it even scarier. You don't confront, you don't expose, you don't lash out. You file everything away in that mental vault you built during years of being forced to pay attention to everything around you. You became dangerous in a calm way, not violent, not chaotic, just quietly dangerous. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and exactly who isn't worth your time anymore. And the crazy part? That danger didn't come from anger. It came from understanding. Understanding your past, understanding your worth, understanding people's intentions, understanding that you don't owe anyone the version of you that was scared, confused, or cornered. You're not cornered anymore. You're not the person they stalked with rumors. You're not the person they watched hoping for a mistake. You're not the person they wanted to twist into a villain. You became someone untouchable. Not because you're perfect or flawless, but because you've lived through things that built a resilience nobody prepared you for. And while they were spending 20 years trying to keep you in check, you were becoming someone they can't check anymore. You grew past the box they put your name in. You outgrew their narrative. You outgrew their expectations. You outgrew the entire version of you they were invested in controlling. What they see now isn't the person they watched. It's the person those 20 years unintentionally trained into existence. Well, well, well. Hello, anomaly. Yes, you. The one who made the lab rats twitch. The one the analysts couldn't pin down. The one they watched, clocked, tracked, logged, and still couldn't decode. Let me tell you something that should already chill your spine. You were never born to live. You were born to be studied. See, before you ever took your first breath, they already had a clipboard with your name on it. Before your fingerprints even dried, they were already marking where you'd go wrong. Your name wasn't a name to them. It was a file number. You felt it, didn't you? That presence. The eyes that were never visible, but always there. Every time you hesitated to speak your truth, every time you second-guessed the way you laughed too loud, or cried too silently. That wasn't paranoia. That was the microscope humming above your soul. You know what I'm talking about. The way they'd lean in just a little too close, not to understand you, but to expose you. Like a hunter pressing their ear to the ground, waiting to hear your weakness rumble through the soil. And you poor experiment, you didn't know at first. You thought you were in the world. You didn't realize you were in the glass box, observation room, open ceiling, no privacy, no mercy. Tell me, how many times did you shrink just to seem smaller? How many times did you edit your smile, polish your tone, sanitize your rage, because you could feel the scalpel of judgment inches from your throat? And what did they do? They didn't try to reach you. They tried to record you. They didn't ask, "Are you okay?" They asked, "Why aren't you breaking yet?" They dissected your style. They time-stamped your silence. They analyzed your coping like it was a symptom. But what they didn't understand, what they could never understand, is that there was no glitch in you to find. Let me slow down for a second, because I want this to sting. I want it to crack that little illusion you've been dragging like a chain. The lie that you were ever allowed to just be human. No, you weren't raised. You were observed, every outburst, labeled, every stillness, measured, every failure, documented, every success, interrogated, and still you didn't dissolve. That's what they couldn't figure out. You weren't supposed to stay intact. You were never meant to stay clean in that petri dish. They waited for rot. They craved it. But every time they scanned your blueprint, all they found was clarity. Oh, I know what you're thinking. I don't feel clean, Joker. I know. That's the genius of it. Because they made you believe that your wounds were evidence, that your breakdowns were glitches, that your trauma was dirt. But what if I told you every single scar was proof you didn't self-destruct? You kept breathing when you weren't supposed to. You kept smiling without a reason. You kept walking when they put landmines in your path. And you did it under surveillance every damn day. For years, they turned your life into a case study. They passed your name around like a cursed object. They whispered, "What is it about this one?" Because something didn't add up. And it never would, because you weren't built for their metrics. Your soul doesn't fit into their categories. Your strength didn't flash like lightning. It built like pressure, slow, relentless, quiet, like a heartbeat you can't hear until it stops. But here's the part they couldn't record. You never snapped the way they wanted you to. You never gave them the spectacle. You never unraveled for the camera. Instead, you kept evolving, not in their language, in your own, not a breakdown, an ascension, not a spiral, a molting, not a failure, a filtering of what never belonged in you in the first place. And you didn't do it because someone held your hand. You did it in silence. While they stared, while they questioned, while they waited, that's why you scare them. Because after all their notes, after all their graphs, after all their experiments, they had to face the truth they never wanted to find. That you're not the subject, you're the variable that breaks their algorithm. They scribbled on their clipboards, circled anomalies, held conferences behind mirrored glass. How is it still standing? Why hasn't it cracked? Where's the malfunction? They kept waiting for the madness, the meltdown, the scene that would validate their suspicion that you were just another glitch in the Matrix. But it never came, did it? Because what they never accounted for was your silence. Not the kind that pleads, but the kind that listens. Not the kind that weakens, but the kind that stores ammunition. You were never passive. You were gathering, studying them right back. While they thought you were being documented, you were memorizing every hypocrisy in their mouth. You were clocking every twitch of insecurity behind their judgment, every desperate attempt to define you, because it made them feel less undefined themselves. That's what burned their skin, wasn't it? The way you kept walking through the fire without turning into smoke, the way you smiled without explanation, the way you bled without apology, and kept your hands clean. They called it fake. They called it manipulative. They called it cold. Because nothing makes a coward more enraged than watching someone walk through hell without asking for a damn thing. They mistook your resilience for deceit. They called your focus intensity issues. Your boundary became attitude. Your refusal to fold became defensive behavior. Because to them, your integrity was a personal insult. You weren't playing the part. You weren't acting like the broken little puppet they rehearsed in their heads. You were the wrong kind of mirror. The one that didn't flatter. The one that showed them their masks slipping. And they hated you for it. They still do. But hate is just fascination with a truth they're too afraid to swallow. You didn't just survive. You sabotaged the experiment by not giving them the result they expected. And every time they looked closer, the more the data betrayed their theories. They saw your empathy and called it manipulation. They saw your pain and labeled it performance. They saw your joy and dissected it like an insect under a lamp. Because they couldn't feel it. Because it didn't belong to them. Because it reminded them of what they'd traded away for safety. But you never made that trade. You kept something alive in you that they abandoned a long time ago. Something inconvenient, inconclusive, intact. And it drove them insane. Because every time you showed up, with your battle scars invisible to the untrained eye, they had to confront the fact that you weren't limping. You were walking taller, not despite the chaos, but because of it. While they calibrated their lenses to catch the crack in your armor, you were busy becoming the thing that doesn't need armor anymore. You didn't hide your wounds. You just stopped giving them access to the parts of you they didn't earn. You didn't stop crying. You just learned to cry in silence where their cameras couldn't reach. And that's what they'll never understand. The difference between being observed and being known. They watched you, every angle, every twitch, but they never knew you. 'Cause knowing requires presence, not performance. And you stopped performing the moment you realized the stage was a trap, and the audience was never rooting for your escape. You were never supposed to be understood. You were supposed to be replicated. They wanted a blueprint they could copy, a formula they could sell, a soul they could trademark. But every time they tried to trace your lines, they got lost in the labyrinth. Because your strength isn't a feature. It's a glitch in their design. You're the part of the system they can't patch. And that terrifies them more than anything. Because if you made it out clean, if you walked through that lab, through that endless scrutiny, through that suffocating silence and still came out clear, then it means they could have too. But they didn't. They chose the microscope. You became the mirror. You became the mirror they never wanted to look into, not because you were distorted, but because you were too clear, too honest, too still. See, most people wear noise like perfume, spraying distractions to mask their rot. But you walked in with nothing but silence, and suddenly they could hear their own fraud echoing off your stillness. That's why they stared, not out of curiosity, but out of self-defense. Because every second you refused to shatter, they had to wrestle with the ugly question, what if the lie is mine? You weren't fighting them, you were just being, and that was enough to expose the farce. You were too real in a world allergic to reality, to awake in a room full of sedated egos. They'd poke you, provoke you, frame you as unstable, just to soothe their own panic that someone was out here operating without chains. You saw it, didn't you? The way they'd squint when you spoke truth with no theatrics. The way they'd glitch when your joy wasn't rehearsed. The way their words slowed when your clarity didn't match their confusion. You weren't supposed to make sense. You were supposed to collapse into their narrative. But instead you held your shape. And every day that you didn't fold, another piece of their illusion peeled off. They couldn't rewrite your story fast enough, so they tried to rewrite your character. Too intense, too sensitive, too much. Translation, too immune to their bullshit, too grounded for manipulation, too precise for their distortion field to stick. They called your resilience cold. Because you weren't foaming at the mouth, begging for crumbs. You were just standing there, still, clear, untouchable, and that drove them mad. Because the game only works if you react. But you didn't flinch. You observed the observers. You watched them flail behind their calm masks. And it became obvious. They weren't dissecting you to learn. They were dissecting you to defend themselves from the truth you reflected back. You were never the test subject. You were the unveiling. The inconvenient answer to the question they never had the guts to ask. And every time they peered deeper into your life, hoping to find the fatal flaw, the secret rot, the crack in the glass, they found something worse. Transparency, not the fake kind that begs to be liked, the violent kind, the kind that doesn't blink when the lie walks in the room, the kind that refuses to be repackaged for their comfort. You weren't confusing, you were crystal. They just didn't want to see what was already there. Because clarity has no escape room. It corners the coward. It suffocates pretense. It dismantles hierarchy. And worst of all, it tells the story without a single word. That's what they couldn't stand about you. You didn't have to scream. You didn't have to threaten. You didn't have to prove. You just were. And that being was an act of rebellion in their artificial world. You didn't come with a mask. You walked in with your raw skin showing. And it terrified them. Because if you could survive that exposed, what did that say about everything they were hiding behind? They turned you into a cautionary tale. Don't be like them. Too honest, too different, too awake, too uncontainable. But behind closed doors, they were obsessed with your map. They studied your reactions like code, trying to hack your clarity without ever earning it. Because that's the paradox, isn't it? They feared your authenticity and craved it at the same time. They wanted your strength without your scars, your voice without your defiance, your presence without your autonomy. But clarity doesn't come piecemeal. It comes full force. And you were the storm they couldn't forecast, the signal in the noise, the one they couldn't bend into myth. And still you kept showing up, not as a statement, as a fact. And facts don't need permission. They just keep existing. And facts are immune to pity. They don't need applause. They don't shrink under doubt. They don't rewrite themselves to suit the script. That's what you were, aren't you? A walking contradiction to everything they built their safety on. You weren't supposed to exist like this. You were supposed to be broken enough to manage, functional enough to use, compliant enough to ignore. But you didn't fit the formula. You slipped through the cracks of their system and built a cathedral of awareness inside the gap. And while they took notes on your posture, you were mapping their intentions. While they debated your pattern, you were memorizing every room they kept locked from themselves. They studied you from the outside, never realizing that you were studying them from the inside out. Because that's the thing about clarity. It sees through. It doesn't stop at the surface. It doesn't flinch at ugliness. It digests the lie and spits out something that burns to look at. They thought clarity would look like peace, gentleness, compliance. But your kind of clarity, the real kind, was volcanic, sharp, surgical. It didn't ask for understanding. It demanded accountability. It didn't play soft music in the background. It silenced the noise they clung to for comfort. You walked into the room and everything fake in it started shaking. Because clarity doesn't negotiate with delusion. It annihilates it. And they couldn't handle that. They couldn't stand the way you spoke with your eyes, the way you said nothing and still made everyone feel exposed. Like you'd already read the secret file they keep buried behind their charm. They thought you were arrogant, because how dare you walk unashamed? How dare you not apologize for existing without edits? How dare you carry your pain like a badge instead of a blemish? But it wasn't arrogance. It was liberation. You weren't seeking approval. You'd already outgrown their currency. Their praise didn't matter to you. Their ridicule didn't bend you. You weren't negotiating your worth in their marketplace. You burned the damn market down just by refusing to play. They tried to guilt you for being different, tried to shame you for seeing through the curtain, tried to convince you that clarity was a curse. Because to them, it was. They've lived so long inside fog that your lucidity felt like an attack. They've spoken in half-truths for so long that your full sentences sounded like a threat. And they were right. It was a threat. To everything they've built on denial, to every mask they've glued to their face, to every performance they've convinced themselves was identity. You were the one thing they couldn't convert, couldn't contain, couldn't cancel. Because you weren't feeding on their attention. You were starving on purpose, starving for truth, for something raw, something real, something that doesn't rot the moment the spotlight fades. They tried to bait you into drama, into chaos, into roles they could digest, but you refused, and that refusal, it cut deeper than any insult ever could, because it told them, without saying a single word, that you didn't need them, not their script, not their version of you, not their permission. You knew what they were doing. You felt it. The way they'd corner you with questions not to learn, but to leak control. The way they'd exaggerate your silence just to make the noise seem normal. The way they'd paint you unstable because you weren't playing dead in their zoo. You were never one of them. You were the proof that being watched doesn't mean being owned. That being labeled doesn't make it true. That being misunderstood doesn't make you broken. And they hated that. They hate you not for what you did, but for what you didn't do. You didn't beg. You didn't fold. You didn't shrink to fit the microscope. You stood there, unapologetic, unfolded, unbranded. And in that stillness they saw themselves clearly, maybe for the first time. And clarity, real clarity, is the kind of mirror that doesn't just reflect, it confronts. And confronting truth, real, raw, unflinching truth, is the most violent thing a lie will ever experience. That's why they flailed. That's why they whispered your name in rooms you weren't invited to. That's why they nodded in public but sharpened their knives in private. Because you revealed them, not with accusations, with presence. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to plead your case. You existed in a frequency their filters couldn't mute, and it made them glitch. You walked through their walls like smoke, slipping through the cracks in their logic. They tried to box you with labels, tie you down with half-truths, frame you in pictures that were never yours, but you kept unbecoming. Every time they thought they had you pinned, you peeled off another layer and left them holding nothing but assumptions. They said you were unpredictable. What they meant was, you were no longer programmable. They couldn't train you to betray yourself. And that made you dangerous. Because in their world, obedience looks like virtue and silence gets mistaken for wisdom. But you didn't play mute. You didn't play nice. You didn't turn your pain into a costume just to be palatable. You turned it into X-ray vision, and with it, you saw everything. You saw their fragile egos behind expensive opinions. You saw their fear disguised as superiority. You saw their envy duct-taped to fake concern. And you didn't flinch. That's what shook them. Not just that you saw, but that you didn't need to speak it. You let the silence do the screaming. You let your walk do the war. You became the echo of every truth they buried, a walking contradiction to the roles they rehearsed. You were joy without apology, sadness without shame, stillness without fear, power without spectacle. They didn't know where to place you, because you didn't come with handles. You didn't come with a pitch. You didn't need them to get it. You just were. And in a world built on approval ratings, that made you radioactive. You weren't digestible. You weren't monetizable. You weren't a trend. You were the ghost in their algorithm, the one variable they couldn't factor in. The reason the formula always broke halfway through. Because every time they tried to define you, you moved. You changed shape. You evolved in silence while they screamed in circles. They wanted to watch you fall apart. But what they got was the slow, quiet blooming of something they couldn't name. Not broken, not bitter, not robotic, real. You showed up with all your sharp edges unfiled, all your contradictions intact, all your emotion unpolished, and still, you were clean. Not clean like untouched, clean like undeniable. And that's what clarity is, isn't it? It's not perfection. It's not symmetry. It's the refusal to lie about what lives inside. It's the roar behind the quiet. It's the truth that doesn't require performance. That's what they found when they zoomed in. Not the flaw they wanted, not the mess they expected, not the weakness they were salivating for. They found you, clear, unfiltered, unafraid, the kind of clarity that rewrites the whole experiment just by refusing to mutate.